Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Theravada Buddhism series, Dhamma talk number 82. Repetition condition. Asevana Paccayo. We are talking about Patthana. There are 24 conditions in it, and this repetition condition is one of the 24. Let's start with how it is stated in the scripture in English. Preceding 21 jhana wholesome consciousness, except the 7th jhana, are related to subsequent 21 wholesome jhana consciousness, except for the first jhana by repetition condition. The next is preceding 12 jhana unwholesome consciousness, except the 7th jhana, are related to the subsequent 12 unwholesome jhana consciousness, except the first jhana by repetition condition. And the third phrase is preceding 18 jhana functional consciousness, except the 7th jhana, are related to the subsequent 18 jhana functional consciousness, except the first jhana by repetition condition. So, what is said here is there are 3 divisions of consciousness in operation: wholesome kusala, unwholesome akusala, and functional kariya. 3 different groups. And in there, the preceding or before or prior, okay, whichever one words you like, consciousness is related to the succeeding or subsequent consciousness by repetition condition. Whichever one it is, wholesome, unwholesome, or functional, that's how it is related to one another. Of course, you will hear the word 21 wholesome consciousness, 12 unwholesome consciousness, 18 functional consciousness. If you remember the consciousness, you will understand. There are altogether 89 consciousness, out of which 21 are wholesome consciousness, and 12 are unwholesome consciousness, and 20 are functional or consciousness. But out of that 20, 2 are more or less universal, such as adverting consciousness. But the remaining 18, except the 2, only arises in the Arahants. So those 18 we are discussing here, with the exception of the 2. That's one part. Another part is, you will hear the word wholesome consciousness except the 7 jhana. Unwholesome consciousness except 7 jhana. Functional consciousness except 7 jhana. So there's that 7 jhana includes in all 3 divisions. Why? Because this condition is the repetition condition. And there are 7 jhana or swift consciousness are the only one that repeats one after the other. But when it got to the 7th, it changes into registering consciousness. The next one is. So the 7th one cannot repeat. So the 7th one does not belong to the repetition condition. That's the reason he keeps on saying, except the 7, except the 7. And also, you will hear the word, the subsequent consciousness, whether it is wholesome or unwholesome, the subsequent consciousness, except the first jhana consciousness by repetition condition. So in here, the key word is repetition. You have to repeat. Okay? But the first jhana, before the first jhana, there is determining consciousness. So it is not repeating. As it is not repeating, this first jhana is not counted in the repetition condition. Just trying to explain why the 7th jhana and the first jhana are not included, because they do not perform the repetition condition. Okay, these are the little things explaining from what is written in the scripture, so that we can clearly understand. See, repetition condition. In Pali, Asevana Paccayo. So, Asevana Paccayo is translated into English as repetition condition. Or in for plain words to to understand it is repeatedly occurring and strengthening. Asevana Paccayo. It's called repeatedly occurring and strengthening. It's still not very clear, so let's use an example. Okay, let's say you spray a puff of perfume on your body, just one puff, squish. Oh, smell good. But if you keep on spraying several times, let's say 7 times, what happened? The sense becomes stronger and stronger with each spray. That's what repetition does. When you repeat it, with each one, the next one becomes stronger, the next one becomes stronger, the next one becomes stronger. That's why I said repeatedly anchoring and strengthening the characteristics of repetition condition. Now we have a clearer understanding of what repetition condition is. Still, this is in general. This is very specific. Asevana Paccayo, because we are talking about mind and matter. So, let's see how this Asevana, okay, repetition condition. If I say Asevana, it is repetition condition. If I say repetition condition, it is Asevana. Okay, now let's see this Asevana relation to a thought process. You remember thought process? VT. And that we will understand even more clearer. How many thought moments or consciousness does the thought process has? 17 thought moments. Out of that 17 thought moments, 7 swift consciousness or jhana plays the role of repetition condition. You must remember the thought process. Just to refresh it, the first one is past bhavenga, then vibrating bhavenga, and arresting bhavenga, 3 thought moments. When the object strikes, the sensitivity that goes right into bhavenga, and then vayanga behaves in such a way when it's right, that passed, and then it vibrates and it arrested. 3. After that, adverting consciousness. The minds turn around to what it's right for. And then 5 is pincha vinyana, which means if it strikes the eyes, it becomes eye consciousness, ear consciousness. So corresponding sense consciousness arises. 5. And after that, 6 is receiving, 7 is investigating, 8 is determining. 8 of them. Those 8 are all indeterminate, meaning they are neither wholesome or unwholesome. They just is, without being wholesome or unwholesome. After the 8, 7 consciousness arises one after the other. They are called jhana, in English, swift consciousness. Some people translate this as impulsion. Let's call it jhana, swift consciousness. The same type of consciousness repeatedly arises for 7 times swiftly. That's 8 plus 7 is 15. After there's 2 registering consciousness, they are indeterminate. So there's 17. That's why out of 17, the 7 jhana consciousness are the only one that can play the role of repetition condition. The others cannot. Even with that, at the beginning, the first consciousness is not repetition status. At the end, the 7th conscious jhana is not the repetition status. Remember at the beginning, explaining except 7th and 1st. Okay. Now, we know the thought process, which 7th of the thought process plays the repetition condition. "21 wholesome consciousness and 12 unwholesome consciousness arises with jhana. This jhana, swift consciousness, can be wholesome or unwholesome. They arises with it. And then they repeat that for 7 times and produce karma. That's how karma is formed. So if unwholesome arises, all 7 are unwholesome. If wholesome arises, all 7 are unwholesome. Because of that, they produce karma. And 18 of the 20 functional consciousness also repeat 7 times. But this functional consciousness or kriya does not produce karma, because this arises only in arahants who are totally clear from Kilesa. Functional consciousness arises and repeats 7 times, but does not produce karma. And of course, remember, there's altogether 20. The remaining 2, kriya, appears only one moment, disappear. That's why they do not include it. They are not included in the repetition condition. So, 21 wholesome, 12 unwholesome, and 18 functional, place the repetition condition. 20 plus 18 plus 12 is 51. So you can say 51 jhana consciousness performs the repetition condition. Now we are starting to know deeper and deeper about the operation. How many jhana consciousness play this role? 51. And this repeated arising of the wholesome consciousness or unwholesome consciousness for 7 times. When they repeat that, it strengthened it. The first one strengthened the second one strengthened the third one to the fourth. And each time they become stronger and stronger and stronger. The preceding one strengthened the power of that consciousness or karma, stronger and stronger. That is one of the character of repetition condition. So what? Because of that, we need to abandon unwholesome and develop wholesome consciousness. Now we know if we let the unwholesome go, it will go stronger and stronger, and finally you will be in the dark zone. If you develop wholesome repeatedly again and again, you will be in the right zone. From there, we take the lesson and we develop wholesome and we stop or abandon unwholesome, akusala. Easy to say. How do we do it? Buddha taught us everything. Nothing is left. So that we can got waver and confused. There are 4 means to develop wholesome consciousness. First of all, a person must have a desire to have that wholesome kusala arises in oneself. The desire, intention. And once you have the desire, that person have to incline the mind towards kusala, wholesomeness. Just having desire and doing nothing amounts to nothing. Then you have to incline your mind towards it, second step. And once you incline your minds toward the kusala, you dived and sink. These are my words. You dive and sink into the wholesome actions. In other words, you engage, so to speak, both heart and mind with full force. Third step. And the fourth step is repeat that wholesome actions again and again. Or simply say practice. So if you take care of those 4 steps, wholesome actions or kusala will be developed in that person. Repeating the process countless times will make it a habit. And once it becomes a habit, all activities will start to streamline towards this kusala, wholesome actions. Okay, what does it mean by it's streamlined into wholesome actions? I'll inject an example here. Let's say a friend gives you a basket of delicious fruits that you really like, because your friend knows that you like mangoes. So he gives you a basket of delicious looking mangoes. Of course, as soon as you see the mangoes, a thought will arise. Most likely, oh, I want to eat it, I will enjoy it. That's one kind of thought. But for a person who is streamlined with kusala, that first thought will be, oh, I'm going to offer it on the shrine to the Buddha. That's the first thought. Not, I'm going to eat and enjoy it. That's what it means by it's streamlined one to the wholesome path. The thoughts, the first thought when you see the mango is to offer the fruit to the Buddha. Subsequent, wholesome or unwholesome, jhana consciousness becomes more potent. Subsequent one becomes more potent than the preceding jhana consciousness due to repetitive arising. Just trying to re-strengthen what we have just said. The first swift consciousness has no preceding jhana, so it is not that strong. It's the first guy. So it may only produce the result of vipaka, cause and effect, cause and result. It will only produce the result in this life. So if it is the first jhana is the dominant one, you will get the result in this life. But you may, the key thing is you may get it. And also, as it keep on arising repeatedly, the seventh one will be the strongest one. So if seventh jhana is the focus, the seventh or the last jhana is the strongest, and it may produce the result in the next life. And if these two jhana, the first and the seventh, if these karma did not make a result in this life or in the next life, they become debunked. In other words, it expires. They don't carry on. The first jhana and the seventh jhana produce results in first life or the second life. And if it doesn't, their potency expire. Now what is left is 2 to 6. The second to 6 jhana results may be achieved anytime from the third to the last life before attaining Nibbana. So it can happen anytime from the third life, if you're counting from now, from the third life to the last life before attaining Nibbana. And here we keep hearing the word may and may and may. Let's see how these things go. But before that, let's go for the remaining functional consciousness. 18 functional consciousness acts without producing karma, so we don't have to worry about which life it'll come on. Why do we keep on saying it may get the result, may get the result? Getting the result or vipaka of karma requires two things. These two things are Kilesa and karma, mental defilements and volitional activities. You need two to get result. Karma alone cannot produce result. Karma plus Kilesa produce result. Let's take a little reference, detour to the dependent origination. Paticca Samuppada. In the dependent origination, when we say Kilesa is represented by karma and upadana, craving and clinging. When you say Kilesa, that's what it is, craving and clinging. Tanha and upadana. And then when we say karma, it means life activities or bhava. You remember that little phrase? Vedana piccaya tanha, tanha piccaya upadana, upadana piccaya bhava, bhava piccaya jati. Due to feeling, craving arises. Due to craving, clinging or attachment arises. Due to attachment, life activities arises. Because of the life activities, rebirth arises. That's what that little Pali rhymes means. So, life activities of the past life cannot produce rebirth if one has eliminated all kilesa. As long as you have kilesa, it will keep on going. But if you don't have kilesa, then those activities cannot produce rebirth. Except, there's always a little exception we should know. Except for transgression to the Buddha, silence Buddha, Arhats, parents, and heinous killing with intense volition, those are very serious karma negative karma, they can still produce. Even the Buddha and the Arhants, such as Shambhagalana, they have to, so to speak, pay back for their karma. Shambhagalana was killed by a group of bandits because in one of the past life he plotted to kill his parents, blind parents, as if a bunch of thugs are coming. But anyway, that's another story. So, normally, mostly, all the past karma, specifically unwholesome karma that one has done, if you have totally eliminated Kilesa, it cannot produce any more result. That's what it means by it needs two to tangle. Kilesa and karma must be a pair to produce result. And Arahant has no more Kilesa. That's why they do not produce any more result or rebirth, except for these heinous, let's call it, transgression. So that will give quite a bit of insight into the repetition, condition, and jhana and karma and the result. Now I'd like to explain a little bit more about conditions. Okay. Paccayo, Patthana. There are many different conditions work on the same event. Simple way is there are many causes if something happens, not just one. But in here, let's call it conditions. So to give you an example, so that we understand clearly before we dive into the nitty-gritty. Body muscle development. If somebody wants to develop body for Mr. Universe or Mrs. Universe, it requires various conditions. First of all, that person must have a great desire to develop, to sculpt the body, and then must apply effort, second. Third, you need a multiple types of weight pieces. That's another condition. That's not enough. Another condition is a trainer. And then a gym or space to practice. And a regular schedule. And repeatedly practicing the same routine again and again and again. So there are many conditions required to have a body developed to become a Mr. Universe. Now let's see our mind domain. Let's take a case, mental development. We want to develop our mind. In the case of mental development, all of the following conditions are present. All of the following conditions are present. But each condition focus on different aspects. So bear with me if you don't follow quite closely. I'll recite a few conditions here. Repetition condition, Asevana Paccayo. That is the repeated relationship between the preceding cause and the succeeding effects, which are the same type. Contiguity condition, Anandara Paccayo, focuses on having no space or no gap between the preceding and the next consciousness. Proximity condition, Samanandara Paccayo, indicates the proximity of the prior and the latter consciousness. Absence condition, Nati Paccayo, is the absence of the preceding cause when the succeeding effect arises. Disappearance condition, Vikata Paccayo, focuses on the disappearance of the prior consciousness before the subsequent consciousness appears. Powerful dependence condition, Upanijjaya Paccayo, is the cause of succeeding consciousness becoming more robust. See, they focus on different things, but they are all in that mental development process. Investigation of mind and matter to achieve the correct understanding, samadhi, depends on the correct thinking or repeated application of mind to the meditation object, sammasankappa. You need these two, samadhi and sammasankappa. Therefore, Asevana Paccayo, repetition condition is a vital part of reaching the path of liberation. It sounds too theoretical, but if you are practicing, it is all there. It's in your body, the body and the mind, in you, they are always there. But if you look only in theory, it sounds strange. But if you connect it with your experience in your body while observing, you will see as clear as day and night. May all of you be able to practice mindfulness insight meditation, and through the clear understanding of mind and matter, may you attain Nibbana as soon as possible. Sadhu, Sadhu, sadhu. Thank you very much.